Okay, we're getting started here. We're still trying to look up how the group stage went for these. All right, so it looks like GrosHiken here was the first seed, the top victor from Group E, and HexBlaze was the fourth place finisher from all the races in Group F. So right next to each other on the groups on the old challenge page. So it's a sign, maybe, I don't know. A little bit of stream delay between the two here, but hopefully we will see a sync up shortly. But until then, we're going to get into Forsaken City. So the prologue there, you cannot jump during the, or you cannot dash during the prologue, which a lot of people know this game for the dash. So you're jumping a lot to get faster because it's just faster to move. And it looks like they both have pretty good. Is HexBlaze using the full game timer or just the chapter timer? Because I think with the way that timer's working on HexBlaze's end. Yeah, HexBlaze is exclusively using the chapter timer, so we don't see HexBlaze's full in-game time right now. So we can't tell really how they're doing, but it looks like they're keeping on pace with GrosHiken here throughout the beginning of Forsaken City, which is pretty good. These zippers here, when you stand on them, you kind of can jump off of them, and they'll do some weird stuff with your momentum. So you can chain that with one of your many movement techniques, whether it be a hyper or some sort of wall bounce, and you can basically use them to help you move faster in some directions. And of course, since they can move in all four cardinal directions, they can be useful in basically any scenario where they're there. Sometimes you don't want to deal with them, like that screen that HexBlaze just got through. You really just want to get off of them to get to the next part of the screen. But like coming up here, there's some stuff which we're gonna try and skip with neutral jumps actually. Here you'd have to do like launches in several locations to get to where you want to go. But GrosHiken finishes with a really good 105 on Forsaken City. That is a really good time to see. It was a great play from GrosHiken here too, so just all around awesome. And next is Old Site, so I assume this Old Site, just like City, might go faster than, you know, a lot of people can. GrosHiken's definitely a top player. I don't remember exactly where they are on the leaderboards right now, but I'm pretty sure they're like really high up there. So their gameplay is as you need to have to get all the way up there. GrosHiken's gameplay is probably going to be insanely tight. And HexBlaze also playing like, you know, their type player. It can definitely be hard to tell the difference between two massive leaderboard jumps sometimes, except for just minor things. So like, despite GrosHiken like debatably being just a better player in general, we're still seeing HexBlaze fly through things with the same confidence and like control that GrosHiken's using to get through a lot of these screens. Even with GrosHiken going for some crazy strats here to get some of these switches and get away from Battlein, who chases you, so you kind of have to be sneaky with your backtracking. And of course, like right here, you're kind of going to thread in between a few of the Battlein clones that start to spawn so that you can get your movement just where you want it to go and not have to wait for them. Because that can be a big problem, is having to wait around for a Battlein to leave. And HexBlaze, yep, also making it through. And GrosHiken about to come up on a wake. So I mentioned a little bit earlier that there are not very many points where you can see major differences in some players, despite if one player is like much better. But one thing you usually can tell is the awake section, where there is no threat and basically no risk of dying. This section is just a straight set of forward movement with some, you know, with some ascents and decline and descents. I was trying to say inclines and declines, but that is not the right term. And you can, since your speed doesn't cap, you can keep doing movement. You can't keep doing it forever because that's just like task level stuff. You know, you need to be really precise when you get faster and faster. But you can usually see still good chains of movement that are usually more consistent and faster from higher players. So Awake is a really good place to tell someone's consistency or just overall skill in the game. And it also comes right at the end of the second chapter, right before the kind of difficulty really picks up. Chapter 3 is much longer than the first 2 chapters and is also much more difficult. So we have these Dust Bunnies. This is a chapter you kind of have to learn twice because the death cycles, when you respawn after a death or a retry, the Dust Bunnies here are on different cycles than when you enter the room, so you do have to like make sure you know what to do if you mess up your normal strategy. Fortunately, the one room GrosHiken died in so far didn't really have any Dust Bunnies in it. You know, there are moving Dust Bunnies, and then there are just Dust Bunnies that act as spikes. There are also these guys on the walls that or the floors that once you touch them, they become Dust Bunnies, so you can't go there again. But the ones that you really care about, like when we say Dust Bunnies, we don't refer to everything. We really just refer to the ones on cycles because those are the ones you really need to watch out for in this chapter. And GrosHiken, very good beginning to the hotel, and now going to be heading into the huge mess area. So this is a kind of bit of an interesting thing. One thing you're going to notice in the beginning of the game is that it's very linear. There's not a lot of extra paths to go on. Here we kind of get to explore a little bit. We have to clear out 3 sets of things. We need to clear out some boxes, some books, and some towels. And each of them are cleared out by hitting a button at the end of a different path. So we kind of get to do 3 paths in any order that we choose. When you remove stuff from one path, it will affect the other paths. So the paths are going to get harder. So the difficulty is going to scale as you get through the section. However, we don't really need that. We don't really care too much about what's clean and what's not. All we want is to be near a Shiro. After each section, you need to talk to a Shiro to get access to the paths again. So we just kind of do the sections in an order that will get us as close to a Shiro when we exit, so that we can just zoom right through, as GrosHiken's doing here, and HexBlaze is not far behind, hitting the Shiro. The first Shiro now is GrosHiken's working on their second path. HexBlaze is also nearing the spike jump. I didn't explain it when GrosHiken did it, but a few mechanics in this game are kind of weird, involving hitboxes on corners and hitboxes of spikes, which kind of let you like wall jump off of this little spike right here, and then dash upwards, and you can skip this screen. Very nicely done from HexBlaze. There's another one later that we're going to be doing, but that's basically what a spike jump is. You combine kind of a thing involving the hitbox of a corner where you can wall jump off of a corner moving away from it, and the hitbox of spikes not being active when you are moving away from spikes, let you wall jump off of that wall. And GrosHiken now grabbing the key in the middle, so done with the huge mess, going to be moving on to the elevator shaft. The elevator shaft is a series of just very difficult screens. It's not anything, like, specific. It's just a compilation of fairly long and really challenging screens that can absolutely destroy you if you're not on your, like, in the ballpark of, I'm not sure what analogy I'm trying to use here. If you're not on the top of your game, this can be a section that can very easily ruin you. There we go. But it looks like GrosHiken is on top of the game here. So is able to get to the last screen here, which is a really dangerous one. Really big, lots of bunnies everywhere, lots of dust bunnies everywhere. I wish there were normal bunnies everywhere, but we won't have that. Unfortunately, taking a death like at that point in it is really bad, but oh, and that point, that's another really bad point to die. So you don't have mid-screen checkpoints in this game. There are very few screens with mid-screen checkpoints, not including a section. Oh no! Wasn't high enough and just wall jumped into a dust bunny. But with the exception of a few screens, only one very late part of the game will actually have mid-screen checkpoints. So that means no matter how big a screen is, with very few exceptions, if you die, you will get sent back to the beginning of the screen, which is kind of tricky to deal with, but deaths do happen really fast. The kind of game the way this game is, if you die, you will basically be respawned within like a matter of a second or so. So deaths aren't the biggest thing in the world. They're still not very good, but they're not the end of the world. And GrosHiken nearing the end of the Ashiro chase here, making sure Ashiro doesn't dash into them very nicely. And there we go. That was a very good resort from GrosHiken, just with one unfortunate screen that wasted a lot of time. And HexBlaze in the middle of the Ashiro section here, so trying to make sure Ashiro doesn't get them as GrosHiken's in Golden Ridge. Golden Ridge has a lot of really interesting mechanics where it will kind of encourage you to kind of just fight a lot of things. Like the bubbles that act as an extra dash and give you an extra dash, as well as the clouds, which make you bounce, and the wind, which pushes you, are the three major mechanics. And they really encourage you to just kind of be free with your movement and just not let the stage control what you're doing too much. There's a lot of ways to do a lot of things in this stage. So like you see the bubble, you can go under there, and then on this screen, you can do like an extended dash to get up clouds quicker. Just the wind, it creates a lot of possibilities with the things this chapter gives you. Unfortunately, even with those directional blocks, they're going to use the directional blocks for these screens, like coming up on GrosHiken's side, where you kind of have to kind of wait for it to get to a specific point. And this is really the closest thing the game has to an auto-scroller. Fortunately, in a lot of cases, including this one right here, you can actually use the block to give you some extra speed or momentum or just whatever, so you can get to the end of the screen quicker. But you'll still have to wait the block out in a lot of cases. And all right, very nice for GrosHiken so far. This is an insanely good ridge. Because of the things I mentioned earlier. Also, for some reason, this screen is one of the screens with mid-screen checkpoints. I don't know why, but it is. But yeah, this is a stage that, as I mentioned, because of the kind of openness of it, can not only create a lot of possibilities, but a lot of difficulties and challenges. And GrosHiken is just flying through a lot of these really easily. Already going to be on the last section of the stage soon after coming up on this screen. We're going to try and skip a wind cycle with some jumps and dashes at the right time. Missing it, unfortunately. Wanted to do a wall bounce off of that little corner there. Well, the wind, like that, so that you could get to the bubble. And now going to be in the cliff face. The wind here is so harsh that you basically need to dash. However, since the wind is always the same, the wind is connected to the room. We kind of know what the room's going to be like despite the wind pushing us, and people will come up with consistent movement strategies to get through the rooms as if there wasn't wind or something fighting them. They're just going through it. And you see that with GrosHiken just making cake with the cliff face here, already onto the last screen of it. Oh no. Unfortunate death there. And HexBlaze getting close to the cliff face, only a few screens away from it. But GrosHiken's already out of the cliff face, which means that they are finished with the whole stage. And HexBlaze now going to go for that cycle here. Looks like did not make it. Had a little bit of trouble with some of the earlier movement in that part, so did not make it before the wind did. But still made it through the screen first try, which is better than GrosHiken did. So no need to worry there about too much time loss. And GrosHiken into Mirror Temple. So Mirror Temple is kind of a maze. I mentioned earlier that with the exception of the huge mess, this game was fairly linear. Mirror Temple kind of breaks that. A lot of Mirror Temple is kind of this big maze where you figure out what you have to do in order to open a door or something, or just get access to the next part of the stage. And a lot of times you're supposed to use these red bubbles. So you have some skips here. Like you saw GrosHiken do a dash over this small hallway of spikes. And you're supposed to get a red bubble. So the red bubbles are like the bubbles you see HexBlaze using, except they keep flying until you dash out of them or hit a wall. And so you're supposed to use one of those, but you don't need it, and it saves like 2 screens worth of time. HexBlaze is going to be joining the chapter. Usually this chapter is kind of a big problem in the all red berries category, where unless you like can memorize or have notes for stuff, there is just so much stuff happening in this chapter. With where all the keys and the stuff is. Speaking of keys, to get the Crystal Heart, which is a different collectible in this chapter, you're supposed to kind of take a secret exit that puts you past a key door to use the key somewhere else. However, we don't really need the Crystal Heart, so if the game gives us a way to skip a key door, we're able to just skip another kind of big section there by just using the intended secret path. And then you get to play as a Seeker. So the way this chapter is going to mainly work is there are going to be these Seekers, which the Seekers will follow you. Basically, everything you saw the Seeker do in that gameplay section is going to be how they act. So they'll follow Madeline, they'll hurt Madeline, they can dash, they can move in all directions, they can break blocks, but they can't go through the little weird barriers. Yeah, there's a lot to them. Another thing we're going to learn is that they can hit switches. So this upcoming Seeker section, known as Unraveling for GrosHiken, there's going to be a lot of switches you need to hit. Some of those you have to dash into and you can't really do anything. But on some of them, you're going to need to hit the little keys, these things. And one thing you're going to learn is that you can bait a Seeker because the Seeker tracks your location, tracks your position, and then goes to it. You can kind of bait a Seeker into hitting the keys for you. And also like this, when you hit a Seeker, it kind of explodes to respawn, and that increases the range of its block breaking and its key grabbing by a whole lot. So there's a lot of manipulation with Seekers going on in the latter half of this chapter in order to just speed things up even a little bit. But I know some people don't like those minor time saves, so we're going to have a major one. We're going to have Search Skip, which is probably the biggest time save in this run. What you're going to do is, as I mentioned earlier, when we skipped a red bubble, we're going to do that basically again, except what we usually need to do to ride this red bubble across these spikes that GrosHiken just did a reverse extended to get over. Usually what you need to do is ride a red bubble over those spikes. However, the path of the red bubble is blocked by 2 keys, which you might have seen were below the platforms that GrosHiken were standing on when they did the Search Skip. So we skipped getting those 2 keys so that we don't have to ride the red bubble. And it saves a lot of time. I think it saves over a minute, so it's definitely one of the biggest things in this run to make you sure you can do. And it's also not that hard a thing, so it's really just good, easy way to save a bit of time. Yeah, no, I'm not going there with that, Lucius. I'm not gonna go there. Oh, geez. That was kind of scary from GrosHiken. So GrosHiken's in the Theo section where when you're holding Theo, you can't dash, you're slower, and you fall faster, you're heavier. However, when you pick up Theo, he carries your momentum, so you're going to see a lot of stuff like hypers or just dashes into Theo, and then you're going to see pick up Theo during the hyper, and he's going to keep our kind of hyper momentum, so you can still get the speed that you want. And GrosHiken doing a dash block thing there, that's one of my favorite things in this run. Just watching that dash block go. Having a little bit of problem. There we go. I don't know what he was trying there, but apparently that was it. And GrosHiken onto the last screen of the level where they have to go across. There's going to be shockwaves coming from the right of the screen that are going to push them backwards. You usually want to dash through those. However, when you're just trying to like do some dashes as quick as possible to get to the right side of the screen, you might not have a dash or might not be able to dash when one of those little shockwaves comes. However, GrosHiken still getting through the chapter. Very nicely done. Going to be moving on to Reflection as HexBlaze gets the search skip. So quite a bit of a lead for GrosHiken right now entering the 6th chapter, where the kind of theme between all the gimmicks of here is freedom of movement. So you see, we've kind of only been able to dash 8 directions. That's kind of the thing. You don't have 360 dashing, but with these feathers, you have 360-degree flying. If you have an analog stick, you can fly completely 360 there. And you'd also be introduced to crush blocks, which will just fly in one of the 4 directions, whatever you dash into them from. However, using Lake Skip right there, which you saw on GrosHiken's side, was a very specific wall bounce to skip having to use a crush block, and also skipping a crush block right there. So I guess we're not going to see crush blocks as soon as I thought we were. We might have to wait for HexBlaze to get to Reflection if we're skipping this many crush blocks already. Who knows? Nope, there's one. So yeah, that's what the crush blocks do. They also make the— oh, that was a strat from HexBlaze. I was not expecting that. Didn't jump on Seeker, but managed to pick Theo up in midair, which extended the hitbox upwards enough to hit the switch that opened the door. Very nicely done, too. Didn't seem not to panic while hugging against those spikes on the wall, and unfortunately messes up that dash, however dies getting another chance at it. Having a bit of trouble here. This is a very difficult screen. And, okay, I was going to say, ooh, are we seeing GrosHiken go down? But it looks like GrosHiken just missed the bumper. You need to do some split paths here, so there are different screens upwards and downwards. And you can kind of choose which one you want to go to. We usually go upwards with 2 exceptions. Some people will go upwards on a set that a lot of people go downwards on, and I think it might be a little bit faster if done correctly, but we'll see what GrosHiken does, because that's really what I'm here to talk about, is the race, not the possibility of the race. With HexBlaze just now finishing up Chapter 5, very nicely done, and GrosHiken, alright, this is the one that usually is most kind of split up. The least unanimous one, if anything. But going down, a little bit slower, much safer. Much easier to do, more optimal. So just overall, a pretty nice choice. And getting through this screen here, and going to be chasing down Battlein. So if you remember Battlein from Chapter 2, we've been skipping the cutscenes. But basically, every chapter, Battlein does some sort of thing to kind of mess us up, whether it be something along the lines of, getting Ashiro mad at us, which causes the Ashiro fight, or almost leaving us to die on a cart at the end of Chapter 4. Basically trying to get us to get off the mountain and just stop trying to climb the mountain. So right now we're confronted with the idea that Battlein is afraid. So we're going to be going to find Battlein by chasing her hair. After she went kind of crazy at the beginning of this chapter, in order to kind of reassure her that we'll be fine and we can climb this mountain. So we have the fight against Battlein, where Battlein is just trying to hurt you, and you're trying to get close to Battlein to hit her. I'm not really sure what you're trying to do when you make contact with her, but your goal is to make contact with Battlein here. Whenever you hit Battlein, you'll get your dash back, which is good, because Battlein does fly you in the air in whatever direction. Whatever direction is set based on which one it is. So for example, like here, you're going to see GrosHiken fly off to the left, but after this hit, you might see GrosHiken fly off to the right. Never mind, I lied. I don't know anything about this game. When you get your dash back, though, you want to get on the ground, because a lot of your movement techniques, while moving from left to right, which is what you're doing a lot of in this fight, are all based on moving on the ground. Stuff like your ultras, your hypers, your extendeds, everything is based on the ground. So a lot of the times, once someone gets a battle and hit, you'll see them dash to move to the ground as fast as possible. Or if there's some sort of setup, you'll usually see them dash in some other direction, but for the most part, the ground is the way to go. We have HexBlaze in the split pads right now, so also in a pretty good spot of Chapter 6. GrosHiken is nailing this fight, making it look easy when it's really not at all. Battlin's attacks are on set intervals, just like everything else in the game, like the snowballs from Chapter 4, the Ashiro dashes from Chapter 3. There is no luck in this. Everything is set. The only thing that makes it seem like there's luck is, especially with the Seekers from last chapter, slight changes in your movement or your positioning can make drastic changes to other things in the level. So that's one thing. You do have to be rather consistent. And, like, for having no luck, the consistency in this game can be really tough to build up. But when you have consistency with someone like GrosHiken here, you can just fly through about any chapter with no problem. GrosHiken heading into the last screen of the fight soon, as HexBlaze is going to start the chase. Having a bit of a problem getting over these spikes. There we go. That was kind of funny. Just a minor problem. But yeah. So HexBlaze is playing this a little safe. You might notice GrosHiken went through these holes in the spikes, went through an extra hole in the spike that HexBlaze didn't. That's a bit of dev-intended skipping, where you can skip that screen by falling through the holes in the spikes. However, that is one of the few screens outside of the final part of the game where you can fall through, or where you can get a checkpoint mid-screen. And by doing the skips where you fall through the spikes, you actually skip the checkpoint on the screen. So, yeah. You do have to be real careful if you want to play it safe, because the spikes not only have the risk of dying, but have the risk of having to start over from earlier on the screen if you die. So it really just ups the threat of dying. But GrosHiken is fine. Heading into Summit now, as HexBlaze working on the beginning portion of the fight, looks like doing pretty good, not letting the lasers be fired, which is a big thing. If one of those lasers get fired, they can be a huge distraction in what you're trying to do. And they don't have too much of a charge time, so you gotta be quick on your toes before you get blasted with a laser. And GrosHiken working through the Summit right now. Summit as a chapter isn't actually just the Summit, it's just really you have to climb back up the mountain, starting from this section, that's right at the end of Reflection, and you basically go on a recap of each chapter as you're going back up the mountain. So, for example, the 500-meter portion of the mountain, we have a Forsaken City-themed kind of mini-level. So yeah, there's going to be mini-levels for each of the chapters, and then at the end, it's going to have its own couple-minute unique section, but that's going to be in a little bit, so we're just going to focus on these mini-levels, as well as what HexBlaze is doing. So, at the end of the battle and fight, you might have noticed GrosHiken leveled up, which made their hair pink. So, when your hair is pink, it means you have 2 dashes in midair before you run out of dashes, and that's your default instead of the normal red hair, which is 1 dash. Because of this, this level actually has a lot of open pits and spikes on the floor, which make you kind of have to do a lot more air-based movement. And as I mentioned earlier in the battle and fight with why you dash downwards a lot after hitting Battlein, a lot of the movement techniques in this game is based on the ground. So Summit becomes an interesting chapter where you try and be on the ground as much as possible in level design that heavily discourages ever having to land. So like a lot of ways you'll see people get their dash back is like through these dream blocks, which are from Old Sight, Chapter 2. So we're in the 1,000-meter portion of the mountain now. And the game allows you to do this because a lot of the mechanics, such as like the bubbles or the dream blocks, they do give you your dash back when you exit them. So it allows you to just stay in the air more, but you still want to stay on the ground a lot, which makes a really interesting dynamic when watching someone run this chapter. Especially someone at a high level like GrosHiken, who can just fly through it even despite all the challenges being thrown. And it looks like HexBlaze onto the last screen here of the fight against Battlein. So almost almost time for HexBlaze to join GrosHiken in the summit. Unfortunately, taking a death right at the end of the last screen, but it's whatever. And GrosHiken getting through 1500 right now. This Celestial Resort theme brings back the Dust Bunnies, and also has a lot of trouble because there are a few screens that are really big and really problematic with Dust Bunny cycles. Fortunately, GrosHiken is through kind of the more dangerous half of the 1500 meter section, but you can still die if you're not careful on the last screen. Nice save there, grabbing onto the wall and being able to grab the refresh crystal in order to get dashes back and make it to the final screen here. And HexBlaze is going to be joining GrosHiken in Summit, but GrosHiken's already all the way up in the 2000 meter section. I never mentioned at the end of each mini chapter, you kind of have to do the screen where you hit these Battlein orbs. So, like I mentioned earlier with the story, at the end of the fight, you finally convince Battlein that you can make it up the mountain, and so now Battlein helps you get up the mountain, which is another part of the reason why you have 2 dashes, is because you team together, and that's apparently worthy of a level up. I don't know. It was an item in Pico 8. And there's an auto-scroller skip. So when you come back to 2000, you have a lot of the directional blocks again. And that means some auto-scrolling screens, but you can skip them, just like in the original Golden Ridge. So no need to worry. You can also do this with some wall bounces to skip the end of that auto-scrolling vertical section. It's a very tricky one, but it's a very cool-looking one because you don't see too many vertical skips in this game. You see a lot of neutral jumping and you see a lot of wall bounces, but except for that, you don't see a lot of skips with vertical screens. So that screen is kind of unique in that sense, but it's a minor one, so you never really see it talked about, and some people just straight up don't do it. But GrosHiken is just flying through, so, you know, no sweat. Just gonna get that skip out and done with HexBlaze still in 500 meter. Making great progress, but GrosHiken is just flying too fast right now into the 2500 meter section, near Temple Base. So the last section before the level gets to its unique portion of 3000 meters. But until then, let's talk, because 2500 has a lot to talk about. A lot of dash blocks here, combined with double dashes, let you do some crazy things. And double dashes also let you get that skip. So there's an intentional retry. 1 of 2 in the game, the only other one being in Chapter 3. After getting that skip to get that key without having to go to the lower level there. Also coming up is going to be this screen, where people like to call that threading the needle, getting into that small gap, and also door skip, which is a very small, okay, I forgot what I was talking about, but it's a very small skip. It saves a second. However, the community's kind of made a joke about it saving 12 years. Some people like to go for it. Some people are consistent enough with it where they feel like they can take that second from the game. So, you know, all's nice. And now GrosHiken is in 3000. So 3000 is its own unique section of the game where you have basically, it's the final challenge. It's the last stretch. It's the, whatever you want to call it, the final countdown. And there kind of is a countdown because there are 30 flags here And each flag starts counting down, and then when you reach flag 1, that's basically where the summit of the mountain is, and that's going to be the end of the chapter, and also the end of the any percent portion of the game. So the timer is going to end at the end of this chapter. But it doesn't stop with throwing new things at you. It has downdrafts and updrafts, so you may remember the wind. Not only do the flags finally act as mid-screen checkpoints, with a lot of these screens being really big, but also you have downdrafts and updrafts, which are basically like the winds from Chapter 4, except now they blow up and down, which can change your gravity, so basically how fast you fall, how high you jump, how far up you go if you dash upwards. And a lot of people actually tend to like the downdraft section because getting on the ground easier. However, a lot of people tend to not like this updraft section because you're much more floaty and can't move as fast because you're falling really slowly. I personally can kind of agree with that. Of course, when you're falling faster, it's very easy to just plummet into spikes. However, the updraft section here has some really mean level design as well, with a ton of spikes everywhere, which you see. Okay, GrosHiken not reaching the platform, but being able to do some new jumps and save themselves from having to do that checkpoint again. Already at checkpoint 10, so on to like the last third of checkpoints before the end of the game. Gonna be skipping some checkpoints. That checkpoint is just too far out of the way, and the section following that checkpoint is just kind of really easy. To the point where that checkpoint is one people will commonly skip because they feel like they won't need it, and they have to go far out of their way to get it. So it's just basically time loss for the sake of not really much reason, because it's a very easy section to not die on. Flag 8. However, a lot of the later flags, a lot of the checkpoints will be taken, despite being skippable with precise jumps. You'll see with flags 3 and 2, a lot of people take those checkpoints. Like GrosHiken here, already on flag 3, so almost done with the whole game. With HexBlaze soon to enter the 2,500 meter portion. Definitely a very good run from both, but GrosHiken's playing is just absolutely insane. Oh, and making that's a really scary thing if you have no stamina, but GrosHiken, fortunately, was able to make it up to checkpoint 1, which is not a very challenging flag before you get all the way to the summit. And that is GG's for GrosHiken here, who has just now finished in first place. 33:38 is an amazing time. So GG's to GrosHiken. Yeah, GrosHiken's whole run, which is absolutely amazing. Very few major issues. And we have HexBlaze trying to thread the needle right now, but having some problems. Let's see how long HexBlaze decides to go for this. And then we'll see if HexBlaze decides to go for door skip. Yes to both. And very nice door skip from HexBlaze. That was really quickly moving, as well as just in general getting onto the doors. So that's some second for HexBlaze, and they are going to be soon entering 3,000 meter. Oh no, that is not good. Here we go. Onto that last section of the screen again. And there we go. All right, 3,000 times for HexBlaze. Into the downdraft now. HexBlaze, as the name implies, blazing through so far. Not much problem. Skipping checkpoint 24 there, I believe it is. And playing really risky on getting to checkpoint 23. Making it, though, so no need to fear. And... now... there you go. Really good downdrafts for HexBlaze. Oh, gee, there we go. Almost at the halfway point of the flags. Again, there are 30 flags, so 15 is about halfway through the counter. I'd say based on the length of each section and that not all the flags are equally spaced apart, 15 probably isn't exactly the halfway point. I'd probably account that more to being like flag 13 or something rather than 15, but still fairly close to being halfway through that 3,000 section, and HexBlaze made it there very quickly. $13 or $12, because I thought this one was 13 upcoming, but I forgot. Oh, very close there, but making it. And nice neutral jump onto 11. So almost at the final 10 flags, which are a noticeably challenging gauntlet compared to basically the rest. A lot of people like to say that the hardest part of Summit is like of 3,000 is like the range of flags from like 15 to 10, which is understandable. That is a very hard set, but there's no denying the challenge that lies in the last 10 flags here. Even when being able to skip flag 8, it's still scary. Getting back on that cloud to do more dashes. Pretty safe choice. Heading on to the last 5 flags, already on 4. Unfortunate death there. Can we see a sub 40 from HexBlaze? That would be a great thing to pull out in a race, especially with someone racing someone like GrosHiken, whose run was just insanely clean the whole time. Still managing to get a sub 40 for someone like HexBlaze would probably be very good. Not sure. Making it to flag 2 though, so I think if HexBlaze does not die on these last 2 flags, we may see a sub 40. I don't know what HexBlaze's PB is. I don't think it's a PB even if it is sub 40, but definitely still a great run to see in a tournament race. Yeah, that's going to be a sub 40, no sweat. Yep, 39.50 for HexBlaze. Very nice finish to this race. And I'll see if either of these people, if they can interview. Alright, so GrosHiken can't interview, and I don't see HexBlaze anywhere, so I think that is going to be it for this race today. Thank you everybody who came in to watch this. It was a very good run for both. Very entertaining race. But there's only more coming up in about 5 minutes. Let me double check who's racing. Coming up in about 5 minutes on Speed Gaming 5 is going to be Revolution versus DS Gamer 93. So 2 very good runners. And then in 3, so in about an hour on Speed Gaming 3, is going to be Swessy and Relboy, which is also going to be awesome. So everybody go. I'd say if you want to watch more Celeste, get over to Speed Gaming 5 right now. I won't delay you guys any longer. I'm going to be hopping out, so definitely follow these runners. They were absolutely amazing today. And yeah, I'll see you guys over on Speed Gaming 5.